And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ghosts of Bacon, podcast number 78, November the 3rd, 2024. I'm your host, Jake Roberts. Glad I could see so many of my friends here live this evening. All the usual suspects, my friends, thank you so much for all of your support. I really appreciate it. And so what I'm going to do tonight, I have a little presentation that I want to show you where I provide you an excerpt from my book, Keys of the Rosi Crosse and the Ghost of Bacon. And in it, I explain a partial decryption that I did in that book from the dedicatory page of Shakespeare Sonnets. And Jason here in the chat, my friend Jason Mercer is here live, and he's done a lot of work with this. He's done a geometric decryption and done some work. And so I'm going to give you a big shout out, Jason, here this evening, just because of the work you've already done. And of course, as usual, everything we do, your work dovetails perfectly into mine. And I'm going to show that this evening. So before I get started, a couple of caveats I want to throw out there. If you're unfamiliar with my work, it looks like most of the people watching live this evening, you're fans who tune in regularly. And again, thank you. I appreciate your support. If you're coming to my information for the very first time, one of the things I want to caution you about is you're going to hear things that, frankly, you've never heard before, and they will be sounding as though they couldn't possibly be true. And for regular viewers of the show, all of you know exactly what I'm talking about here. My decryptions have revealed the parentage of Sir Francis Bacon, which is not what everyone has always believed. A lot of people want to believe the idea that he was the secret son of Queen Elizabeth I. And this is untrue. What I discovered is that Francis Bacon was actually the secret son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Francis II. And I have accumulated thousands of pages at this point of evidence to support this. Other researchers have as well, and a few of them are actually watching live this evening. So I'm going to please ask anyone viewing this for the first time, please don't spam the comments saying why these things can't be true with all of the information that many of us here in this channel are already familiar with, okay? Just because I was always a fan of that Prince Tudor theory. I was always a fan of Bacon as the son of Queen Elizabeth I. Unfortunately, I've disproven that theory. And so to that end, I just want to, I've already looked at all of the evidence of why the information you're going to be seeing tonight couldn't be true, but unfortunately, for many people, it is true. And so it also ties in with the jaw-dropping revelation I put in my most recent book, Keys of the Rosi Crosse, that Sir Francis Bacon had a twin brother who was posing as Anthony Bacon, the deceased son of Lady Anne and Sir Nicholas Bacon. Now, and that is someone that has come down to us in history under the name of Sir Walter Raleigh. So again, before you post a bunch of comments about their difference in ages and all of those kinds of things, I deal with all of this in my book, and it's all laid out right there for you. Just checking out some of the comments here. Yeah, everyone, we've all been anticipating, Ray's putting it up there, about my friend Ryan Plaster's latest updated video. I haven't watched it yet. He sent me the link, or I have the link, and I'll be checking that as soon as I can too, just like the rest of you. So tonight, after that little rambling preamble here, what I'm going to do is set this up so I'm There we go. And this is the presentation I'm doing this evening, the dedicatory page of Shakespeare Sonnets. And I'm going to introduce this idea and do a partial decryption that appears in my book. Now, let me set the screen properly here so I'm not covering up any of the good stuff. All right. So this is what the dedicatory looks like, and is, as we read this, it says, "To the only begetter of these ensuing sonnets, Mr. W.H., all happiness and that eternity promised by our ever-living poet, wisheth the well-wishing adventurer in setting forth." Signed, T.T. Now, most people will get into what this is, but there's been a lot of speculation about, what this really means. Some of the language seems stilted. That's because, as you may have guessed, there is a possible transposition cipher hidden within this surface text. I will not be getting to any of that this evening. I did not include that in my previous book. However, it is something I've worked on. So the question is, to whom is it really dedicated? And everyone speculates it's this Mr. W.H. Now, who is this person? Now, there's been a lot of speculation from historians and Shakespeare experts alike. Some of the names that have been put forward are Henry Wriothesley, the third Earl of Southampton, someone I believe to be the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth I. But notice the initials are reversed. And again, a lot of times people will say, oh, these are typos. And that's their explanation for these types of so-called errors. Another name put out there is Mr. William Herbert, the third Earl of Pembroke. Here's the thing. These were noblemen, both of them. And calling them Mr. would have been considered an insult. So not really sure, how we can kind of square that. Some people believe that it was a misprint for Shakespeare because it was supposed to be Mr. W for William and then S.H. Shakespeare. Now, the most recent theory that came out was, other than mine, was that it stood for the name of William Home, who also was a friend or a known associate of William Shakespeare. And this comes from an American researcher named Jeffrey Cavney. So, like I said, there over the years, a lot of names have been floated with no real hard evidence of who it really is. And so my contention of the identity of this Mr. W.H. is actually Walter Raleigh. And you're going to see why. When you read my book, you'll understand that the sonnets were dedicated to Walter Raleigh. Walter Raleigh was the fair youth. I believe that the sonnets were written when both Walter and Francis Bacon were much younger. And first of all, just quite simply, the letter H actually can be the letter R when we're using our at-bash substitution system, when we're dealing with Bacon ciphers. And so there are also, when we look at the values at the end of all of this, in Bacon's cipher systems, you're going to see what can only be Walter Raleigh. So also TT, people believe that was signed by the publisher Thomas Thorpe. And so obviously that makes very good sense. But instead of using his name, we have these two initials, which we all know is the familiar double tau, which, again, I'm not going to get into too much of this regarding Thomas Thorpe's publishing of it and all of these things today. I'm just going to straight up look at the cipher evidence here. Now, here's my shout out to my friend Jason. Look at that punim. Jason Mercer was one of the first ones, and I think he was the first one in our group, to point out that the spelling of the word sonnet had changed when Shakespeare published. And so that indicated to us that there was a very specific reason. And we all know this. Anyone who's been following my work at all or Jason's, we know that these changes are significant. So in the dedicatory, he refers to these sonnets, plural. And so all we do is we calculate the values in simple reverse and case ciphers. And in simple cipher, when we have all of the values of the word sonnets, plural, they total 100, which many people who watch the show know is the value of Francis Bacon in simple cipher. The reverse cipher value of sonnet is 75. This is the reverse cipher value of the name Stuart with the English or Scottish spelling. And by the way, 100 is the simple cipher value of that same name and that same spelling of Stuart. So we start to have a pattern developing here. And then lastly, the case cipher value of sonnets is 126. 126 is the case cipher. Notice they're going each in lockstep in pointing to the same exact cipher system. Case cipher value of the name Walter. So as I said, 100 being Francis Bacon in simple, and 75 Stuart in reverse, 126 Walters in K. And also, as I said, 100 is also Stuart. So sonnets can represent these names of Francis Bacon Stuart and Walter Stuart, of what their true identities are. And so, Jason, I want to give you a big thanks. No, buddy, thank you. You're the one who, you were the first one to really kind of point that out. And when I started really looking at the values, I'm like, oh, we have 126. That's Walter. So thank you for that. Hey, Lon, glad you could join us. Just looking at the chats quickly. And so, good question, Kat. And again, when we're looking at this, the substitution for W would be D, but that doesn't really fit any of our cast of characters that we're looking at. So it's odd. A lot of times when it comes to initials, you'll just see one of them being changed here. And I used a lot of the same methods in the Dedicatory that I used in the portraits that I decrypted in the book as well. And you see that same convention happening. And again, not really sure why. I think one letter is used as a hint, and then the other is you need to kind of, figure it out. That's my thought. So if sonnets, the word sonnets can represent the names of Francis Bacon, Stuart, and Walter Stuart, who begot them? Well, the definition of the word begetter is creator of something or the parent of someone. And so I find that to be very interesting. So the question is, when we look at the cipher values of who, quote, begot sonnets, as in these men, well, we add up begot, begotter of, and in simple cipher, they total 99. When we add up the values in reverse cipher, they total 151. Lastly, in case cipher, they total 255. And these are very significant values. I included the short cipher value here because it's obviously highly relevant, and that total is 45. Now, Francois II is, when we calculate the values of that name and title of their father, Francois II, it's 99 in simple, 151 in reverse, and 255 at K. Francis II was the begetter of Francis and Walter. And the 45 value, that's the value of Francois in short cipher. Yes, I'm sure it's all a coincidence. Also, just as significant, the values of Queen of Scots. 151 is the simple cipher value of Queen of Scots, and 255 is the case cipher value of Queen of Scots. Their mother and father share those values as identifying them. They were the begetters of these two men, Francis Bacon Stuart and Walter Stuart. Continuing on, let's take a look at who Mr. WH might be. Now, that superscript R, notice how it's offset, it's up, and it's the only lowercase character in the entire Dedicatory. So this implies what I call a reversal in my work. We see this frequently in the work I did with the portraits and calculating the signatures of both the sitter of the portrait as well as the painter, whether they were Bacon or Raleigh. And so the superscript, what this means is that the letter R in this case takes on the value of the letter H. Okay, so in each of the ciphers, instead of the values of R, which would be 17, 8, and 17 in simple reverse and K, it takes on the values of the letter H, its substitution in Apache, which is 8, 17, and 34. So the simple cipher values of adding up these four characters is 49. That's the value of Raleigh in simple cipher. When we look at the reverse cipher values and we add them up, they total 51, which is the value of Walter Raleigh in short cipher. Lastly, in K cipher, when we add up, again, we're using the values for H for R, so it's 34 in both of the H's. We have a total of 101. That's the value of Raleigh in reverse cipher. So Walter Raleigh was the well-wishing adventurer, who is setting forth. I believe, and this is my theory, and people who watch my podcast know I don't like speculation. I don't like to speculate, but in this case, when you look at my book, The Keys to the Rosi Crosse and the Ghosts of Bacon, in this section that I do on the sonnets, you're going to see that I put together a great deal of cipher evidence that indicates that this it's no longer speculation. It becomes more of an inference, where I've taken all of these details, I've added them up logically, and this is what I've concluded as a result. But for the purposes of this video, yes, I'm just going to say it's my theory. It does sound as speculation. The sonnets, Bacon wrote them when he was a teenager. And I think when he first wrote them, he only wrote 152, and Walter Raleigh added the last two, 153 and 154. And I explain why in my book. He wrote these for his twin brother Walter because he was about to go on an adventure. We all know that Bacon traveled to France as a part of the entourage of the ambassador Amias Paulet, and at the age of 16, and he spent just over 2 years there until his surrogate father, Sir Nicholas Bacon, passed away. But as he traveled to France, I believe that Walter Stewart, the man we know as Walter Raleigh, traveled with Sir Francis Drake on a circumnavigation and privateering trip. So this was a true adventure. And so he was sending well wishes to this well-wishing adventurer because as Bacon was being educated in France, much like any royal prince would have been educated as they toured Europe to all of the different courts. And that's exactly what Bacon did. What would happen is we would have Raleigh getting an education from the greatest privateer in English history. So before he left, I think that he gave these sonnets to Walter as a gift. And while I do identify Walter Raleigh as a teenager as the fair youth, and there's nothing lustful about the love. It's all very, very platonic. So those are my thoughts, gang. What do you think? Yeah, Lon, 117 is King Stuart, or Stuart King. Yeah, Lon. Hey, Z, glad you can make it. So yeah, what we have here, and when you add all of this in just the dedicatory, and by the way, these were just 3 tiny pieces of cipher evidence I found in the Dedicatory. The whole thing is encrypted. Jason, I'm sure you would agree with me. When you take all of this and you add it to everything else I found within the sonnets themselves, for example, Raleigh added, I believe, the last two sonnets, because they're a little different in terms of theme and tone than the others. They don't fall into the category of the fair youth or the dark lady or the rival poet. And so I think that, he added them. So we would have a total of 154 sonnets, which when you divide it by 2, it's 77, the value of Rex Bacon. And so if Walter Raleigh was posing as the deceased son of the Bacons, Anthony, there were 2 Rex Bacons. So 2 times 77, 154. And this twin symbolism and this structure of the sonnets themselves also echo that same symbolism. Thanks, Tommy. I'm glad you think it's fun to follow, but you know what? It's like it's even more fun when all of a sudden you just kind of see it appear in front of me. It's just, and other people who've been doing this now too. And Jason, I know you could chime in on this, of how fun it is when all of a sudden you see everything just kind of click into place. Yeah, Tommy, for sure. And absolutely. And when you're looking at the idea where they're encoding their secret identities, right? Which are state secrets, right? These guys are sworn to secrecy, raised by the closest allies the Queen has, and raised to be her servants, though they be royalists themselves. It's a pretty powerful thing. And so, even though they were both very loyal to Queen Elizabeth, at the same time they were still recording their story for all of us to see today. Oh, decoder ring. That's cool. I didn't know that. He says White Rabbit is 117 and 26 letter ordinal cipher. That's really interesting. I didn't realize that. And we certainly are following the White Rabbit down some rabbit holes. Those of us doing this stuff for sure. Oh, thank you, Kat. Yes. Reading from my 6th grade history book, 2 men, Sir Humphrey Gilbert and his half-brother, Walter Raleigh, made several voyages to North America. Yes, that is very true. And if we look at Walter Raleigh's created history, and then, Gilbert was indeed his half-brother. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that a lot. But like I said, this is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg, everyone. But when it comes to how much corroborating evidence, I and Jason and Will Russell, Z, Stephanie McPeak Peterson, as we continue to roll out this information, it continues to be repeatable. And I don't know, I just think that is really the key to Bacon's scientific method, is being able to repeat this information. And so those of you who have read my books, and if you haven't yet, I'm trying to obviously promote them with this show. Please go and purchase one at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. They're available in both locations online. I think that if you sit down and you read it and take your time, anyone who looks at this closely recognizes that, I have stacked on so much corroboration on top of just the ciphertext from multiple sources, that the same message always repeats. Francis Bacon and Walter Raleigh were twin brothers, and they were the sons of Mary Queen of Scots and Francis II. And as much as many people don't like that information, it's not going away, and it's fact. It's factual. Well, thanks, Z. I appreciate you very much. And great question, Jan. As usual. So I'm understanding the course of the twins, but why the need to bring in a Shakespeare into the mix? It was the symbolism, pure and simple. I think that when he first wrote the sonnets, there was no Shakespeare at that point. It wasn't until they started writing the plays and having them performed, and here was this actor, William Shakespeare, and then also they saw the importance of the symbolism of shaking the spear of light in people's eyes. That I think that's where it kind of came from. I think the name Shakespeare came after the fact, and they recognized that this work that they created, because Raleigh did help write the works of Shakespeare. Okay, make no doubt about that. I think that what they did was they created something that was so fine and so good. They knew, this is why he talks about the ever living poet. This is why he's immortalized you, this ever living poet, because they knew that they had created the English sonnet in a form that no one had ever seen, and they knew it was going to last forever, right? What better vessel to then afterwards go in and change, some spellings here and there just to encode some cipher messages in there for people, hundreds of years in the future, to reveal the truth. And I think that's what they did it, and why they did it, and how this whole idea of Shakespeare came about. So, great question. Well, thanks, Penny. Thanks, Z. And yes, absolutely. And this is why I've been doing this. Now, up until this point, I think other people have either figured out pieces and parcels of this, or maybe even the whole thing the way I have, but they all have chosen to keep it secret as members of the RC. But Bacon also tells us that that's what is hidden needs to be brought to the light, and time will reveal the truth, just like the cover of the New Atlantis indicates. So I feel that, by bringing this information out into the light, it's really what I was meant to do, for sure. Yeah, Tommy. In fact, the reason why we see Shakespeare actually inventing words is when Bacon went to France, his uncle, the King of France, had assembled artists and poets and playwrights to consolidate the French language. So they were all working together to actually create the French, because at the time, people in Eastern France were speaking Italian, and all these, in another part they're speaking a form of German. And so what he wanted to do was really consolidate the English, because if he consolidated the French language, he ruled a kingdom that was cohesive, right? Language. And so Bacon was so inspired by that, he wanted to go back to England and do the same thing for England, and that's what he did with the works of Shakespeare. Very, very true. I want to get back to Lon. I would say that is a very good chance. And in fact, it could also be Philip Sidney as well, because I noticed you did the Mars would have been the correct choice there as well. So what Lon's talking about here, everyone, is the RC alias formula for my book. And yeah, Lon, I see a connection between all these guys, and it makes sense that suddenly William Alexander later, as the work of Court Lindahl points out, rewrote or added to the Arcadia for the Princess Countess Pembroke, right? Countess Pembroke's Arcadia. And so he added a whole chapter to it to make it more cohesive and written in a very similar style. So whole lot of dots are lining up for sure. You know, Jenny, that's just it. It a lot of people, especially Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson made fun of William Shakespeare, the actor, for strutting around and acting like he was a big shot. When he also said that he didn't know any Latin or Greek or didn't know anything really about the inner workings of court, and so it seems that he benefited by his name being used. Um, for no other reason than it obviously benefited his ego. Uh, but you look at his will. There's nothing mentioned of anything he had ever written. I think the only thing mentioned in his will, he left his bed to one of his children. I think something like that. Um, Ray, I apologize. I'm not going to put your comment up on the screen, but no, not at this time. There's just way too many moving parts going on right now. But at some point, I promise, Ray, all things will be revealed. Um, you know, Adam, you're someone else that I meant to mention. You and your dad, the work you're doing in corroborating everything that I've done and adding to it. Um, it's crazy, but it's all true. Yes. Oh, great question, Charles. Here's the thing. All the evidence that I've found, see, Anthony and Francis Bacon, according to Orthodox history, uh, their parents, Sir Nicholas and Lady Anne Bacon, um, had two older daughters together who didn't survive childhood. Okay, they both contracted the same illness and died between the ages of 1 and 2, I believe. At the same age, Sir Anthony had written a letter stating that Anthony had also contracted the same disease, but he seemed to be recovering. And after that, there's no other mention of Anthony Bacon anywhere. Until all of a sudden, Francis Bacon enters the household, um, and then here's Anthony as well. Uh, the ciphertext that I've decrypted stated that Walter was able to live free as Anthony. Okay, so I believe what happened was that the child Anthony passed away probably right around the same age as his older sisters, and that when Walter and Francis arrived, they raised Walter as Anthony. That's, again, it's just from that one ciphertext, that one message. It said Walter lived free as Anthony. So, and I think that it was an alias that Walter later passed on to one of their other operatives, who then finally returned to England several years, like 12 years later, I think, after operating in the continent. Great questions, gang. Funny, decoding, you're so true. You're so spot on. You mentioned De Vere, and I address Edward De Vere in my latest book as well. And absolutely, that they really tried to make sure that it was in a class of its own, and they succeeded. I didn't realize that one. You say that William Alexander was the guy that mapped the lots on Oak Island. I hadn't heard that. If that's very interesting, if that's true, and I trust you that it is. Z, again, such a great question. They did so much together. How do you tell who is doing what? Once again, the only way I've been able to differentiate between the two is the alias formula. And in some cases, there are indications that they actually shared the same alias. They would pass it off to each other. If one person couldn't, play the role, they would hand it off to the brother and have them do it. Just crazy, crazy stuff. Could Raleigh, having failed at Roanoke, trying to establish colony in Nova Scotia, tried and changed his name for PR reasons to William Alexander? Yes, Kat, very, very, very probable. In fact, one of the latest decryptions I've done was from a map, one of their maps. I can say that much. And it basically states that Walter say he's sorry for moving Roanoke here to Cooper's Cove. And so the thing is that Cooper's Cove wasn't even a colony at the time. It was a location. It was a known location to fishermen. And, it was a great location for a colony because they, John Guy later established a colony and ran it in that exact location. But it seems that Walter Raleigh actually picked them up and moved them. And again, as the first Baron of Newfoundland, William Alexander would have been the ruler of that whole island. And that was the agenda of Bacon and Raleigh. They wanted their own kingdoms because, well, theirs had been taken from them. Yeah, Barbara, that's what I think it was. And it seemed that it was hereditary along Lady Anne Bacon's line because, she was Sir Nicholas's second wife. And he had older children as well from his first marriage. Yeah, Kat. It's not that he founded them. He was the first one. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Ray. I'm going to put that up on the screen for everyone. I just watched All Is True recently about Shakespeare. Very good. He left his bed to his wife because they apparently were estranged since he was always away at the theater. But very good. Thank you, Ray. Yeah. Yeah, Lon. A little more about that I could share with you privately, probably. Listen, gang. I always say it every other week here, or I try to do it every other week. I don't always succeed, but I want to say thank you all for your support. A lot of the same names continuing to show up for the live podcast. A lot of people are now starting to find my videos online. And if you enjoyed this information, if you think others would like it, please share it. Click the share button. Click the and follow me. Click the like button. And the more follows I get, the better and bigger we can make this. So, and like I said, the more people that come on board. I mean, we have Jason, Adam, Z, William, John. Didn't mean to forget you, John. Stephanie. A lot of great Bacon researchers out there who are now picking up the charge and kind of carrying that torch. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your help. And let's keep on doing this, okay? And listen, if you're one of the skeptics watching this video, and I should have said this at the beginning, but I usually only remember at the end. If you think this is a bunch of BS, try it for yourself. Really look at my book and read it and understand it. And again, try to do some of these techniques that we talk about on the podcast and in my books. And anyone and everyone who does this, and they take the time to really consider it, they always contact me, a month later saying, "Oh my gosh, you were right." And even though I always say, yeah, I know. But it's satisfying to know that people are taking the time to really kind of dig in and do the kind of work it takes to understand what it is we're all doing, and the fact that we're not, a bunch of Looney Tunes here, just kind of talking, nonsense. It's all real, and it goes so much deeper than this. And at this point, gang, I've acquired so much material. I don't know when I'm going to be able to release all of it, but we have some very exciting things on the horizon here at the Ghost of Bacon. The research I'm doing with my good friend Bill Smith. A lot of you are privy to some of what we're doing, but we're playing this pretty close to the vest here. I think that everyone is going to be very excited to know the kinds of things we're doing. It's all very, cutting edge research when it comes to the real history of our world, not just what we've been told, not what people have been able to piece together and guess at, but actually boots on the ground history. Like I said, very exciting stuff. So until next time, people, give people a shout out. Penny, thank you for joining. My dear sister. Thanks, Z. And again, Z was one of the first ones who contacted me and said, "Oh my God, I read your book and you nailed it. You had me completely convinced." Jetty's saying, "No, don't do it." Yes, I am, Jenny. I'm trying to get all of you to be decoders, please. It's too much for just me. All right, Tommy, that's great to hear, and glad to hear you're on the mend, my friend. And yeah, join in the fun. There's enough for all of us. And Jason, thank you very much. Good night to you, my friend. Patty, my other sweet sister. Love you guys very much. Till next time, gang. We'll do this again here in a couple of weeks. And thanks for joining, and thanks for sharing in the fun. Let's see how we do the outro here. Let's do this. Bye, gang.